In order to see if my documentary developed or challenged codes and conventions in real media products, I decided to compare it to a BBC Three documentary called The Worst Place to be Disabled, which was aired in 2015. I chose to compare this documentary with mine as we decided that our documentary would be aired on BBC Three as well, and they have similar audiences of students between 15 to 20 and secondary audiences of parents or adults 30 plus. For my documentary, I wanted to follow codes and conventions and include expert interviews, as I had learned from my audience research that both my secondary and primary audience would want to see an expert interview in the documentary. In the documentary, we decided to interview the principal of the school, Solihull Sixtham College, Paul Ashdown, to see what he thought about the college meeting the needs of those who were physically disabled. Through gatekeeping, we cut down Paul's interview to what we thought to be the most important information and mediated the piece so the audience could understand that the college can't meet everyone's needs and sometimes it can cause barriers for students and members of staff. Similarly to this, the BBC documentary also included experts. The first interview takes place, which is an expert interview and is carried out by the presenter of the documentary. The presenter interviews a member of staff from the Human Rights Watch and asks her what's the worst place to be disabled, which is the documentary's topic. The question is then asked again at the end of the documentary to another expert in Ghana to reflect on the documentary's findings. This is an example of circular narration, as the documentary goes full circle and comes back to the original question. As we only created the first 5 minutes of the documentary, we didn't have an ending, but if we were to finish making the documentary, I would also return to the original question to reflect on our findings. Like my documentary, other interviews also take place with some experts and some witnesses, such as people who were disabled and living on the streets in Ghana. These witnesses were similar to my witnesses in my documentary, like Rebecca and Suzanne Medley, as they relayed their personal experiences at the college, which is what the witnesses did in the other documentary. I'm glad we were able to interview and film the witnesses' real-life experiences, as it helped to create actuality in the documentary. Actuality is featured within my documentary as we follow student Rebecca around to see how she gets around the school and how she interacts with her friends and how they give her help. Actuality is a big part of the BBC's documentary as its focus is to see what it's like to live in Ghana and be disabled. We wanted to use actuality to reveal what it was like to be at school and disabled, and we wanted the audience to understand these real-life events that occur every day. Another coding convention frequently used in documentaries are voiceovers. We decided to have a voiceover in our documentary so we could give the audience extra information when needed and explain what was happening in a linear structure. Like our documentary, BBC's Worst Place to be Disabled documentary has a voiceover as well as a presenter. We decided not to use a presenter in our documentary as we thought it was a sensitive topic and we wanted our audience to form their own conclusions, and we felt that having a presenter could allow us to express our opinion to the audience. As we wanted the documentary to have a fairly observational mode, we didn't want the audience to feel we were pushing our own personal opinions across. We believe that we have a mixed style type of documentary as it includes interviews, an observational mode and a narrative to help advance the topic of the argument. In contrast to this, I think the BBC's documentary is self-reflective, as the presenter, who is also the subject in the documentary, acknowledges the presence of the camera. In our documentary, we used codes and conventions and vox pops to get an understanding of how much students actually know on the topic. The vox pops were used at various times in the documentary and helped the documentary to progress in a fast pace. However, the BBC did not follow this convention and didn't use vox pops throughout the documentary. I believe this is because the documentary focuses on interviewing witnesses about their experiences and experts, that there was no need for vox pops to be used. I'm happy we followed convention and used vox pops as it allowed the audience to get a good understanding of how much students knew on the topic and how much awareness there is in schools. Both mine and the BBC's documentary uses Levi Strauss's binary opposites within the documentary. For our documentary, we wanted to show students with a disability as good and powerless, and the college that creates barriers for them bad and powerful. We did this through mediation and made Rebecca look timid and powerless when interviewing her, as she's talking about how the college sometimes isn't able to meet her needs. We show the college being powerful through various shots we've used, such as an upward pan of some stairs to show that they're like powerful and like obviously they're a barrier for people that have a physical disability. Similar to this, the BBC's documentary also uses binary opposites of the powerful and powerless, as they show people who are disabled being chained up and their oppressors being possession of lots of money and being abusive towards the disabled people, both physically and verbally. I'm glad I used binary opposites in the documentary, as it shows the audience a clear argument between the two sides, which they can come to their own opinion on, although the preferred opinion would be that the college is bad as they aren't meeting all the needs of those who are disabled. For our introduction to our documentary, we decided to accompany it with some upbeat music that keeps the documentary fast-paced and helps to grab the audience's attention and intrigue them. Our target audience said they enjoyed the music and thought it was positive and uplifted the serious tone of the documentary. The BBC's documentary also used music for the introduction, which had the same effect as our documentary. It made it upbeat and fast-paced. However, the BBC didn't only use music in the introduction, like our documentary, but instead, throughout, mainly used as ambient music, which reflected the atmosphere of the documentary. For example, at a really emotive part of the documentary, they would have slow, low music to reflect a sad tone. After seeing the music used in this way, I believe I should have used the music more frequently throughout the documentary to help reflect the tone of the documentary.
Living and working in London has its own challenges, but it doesn't stop me from doing what I want. But there are many places in the world where life is terrible for disabled people. After I left the camp, I contacted Madame Irene and asked her if she really does kill disabled babies and toddlers. She said she doesn't personally kill them, she just performs her rituals, and after several days they die.
Archival footage is another coding convention we used in our documentary. We used the archival footage at the end of the documentary to show all the websites the audience could go to get extra information on the topic. However, the BBC's documentary didn't use any archival footage, as all the footage was the presenters of the experience in Ghana. I'm glad I used archival footage, as it allowed me to show part of a PowerPoint that was created to encourage people to speak out about their disability. If we were to make the rest of the documentary, I would feature more of the PowerPoint in it. Unlike the BBC documentary, our documentary didn't challenge any forms of codes and conventions in documentaries, as we wanted to appear as professional as possible to the audience. I'm happy we did this, as it followed codes and conventions and made the product look like a real-life documentary.